As President Biden pursues re-election, his approval rating, bad news at the White House, well, it's hit a new low. Jennifer Horn and Jon Kott join us now to discuss. Jennifer is a senior fellow at the University of Chicago and previously served as chair of the New Hampshire Republican Party. Jon is a partner at Capitol Counsel and a former advisor to both Senator Chris Coons, Democrat, Delaware, and Joe Manchin, Democrat, West Virginia. Jennifer, let me start with you. I want to play a little bit of a Super PAC ad sponsored by Liz Cheney's Super PAC to air in New Hampshire about the former president. Let's take a quick listen.
Donald Trump has proven he is unfit for office. Donald Trump is a risk America can never take again.
Jennifer, how do you expect that to land in New Hampshire?
Well, with Republicans, certainly won't land particularly well. The Republican Party in New Hampshire, certainly the leadership and the primary base, the activists, are all in for Donald Trump, and they have been since 2016. And I don't think that that's going to change anytime soon, in spite of the legal, in spite of the outcome of the civil case that we saw today. Now, for Liz Cheney, in New Hampshire, it's independent voters who really determine the outcome of elections. Republicans and Democrats are always very close in numbers as far as registered voters, but independents almost always exceed either Republicans or Democrats. And that's a status that's kind of given a home for those Republicans who are dissatisfied with Trump. I think it's going to land well with those voters, who could really make a difference in the general election in particular.
But just to clarify, I want to make sure I heard you correctly, Jennifer. You don't believe among base activist Republican voters in New Hampshire, today's civil verdict in Manhattan will have any negative effect for the former president?
I really do not. I don't think it'll have much effect for the president anywhere in the country, frankly. He's got that 28 to 33% of support amongst Republican primary voters. It has been firm almost since the first day that he came down that stupid escalator in New York City. And it hasn't really changed since then. It's the same in New Hampshire as it is in the rest of the country. And I don't think that what we saw today is going to move them. Everything that this president has done over the last 6 or 7 years, everything he has said has not moved them. I don't think this is going to have any impact. Whether or not that changes with other investigations and, what might come out of that over the next 12 months, I don't know. But I don't think what we saw today will probably have any significant impact on his numbers.
And to Jennifer's point, there are, of course, other investigations. Jon, I want to ask you how it's one poll, but the Washington Post, ABC News poll, for whatever it's worth to political insiders, matters a lot in the Washington conversation broadly. How bad a news was it for the White House and President Biden?
I don't think it's bad news. Look, he's had some
It's good news.
It's not good news, but he's had some rough poll numbers. But look, he just announced his campaign. He's going to be getting out there more. He's going to be telling the story to the American people of what he's done for the last 2 years, which, if you just look at it, he probably is the most impactful president of my lifetime in passing legislation. He now has to get out and sell that to the American people. He has to get the surrogates out there doing it. He has to have all the labor unions. The AFL-CIO is going to play a huge role in this campaign, explaining how great he's been for working-class Americans. And
it would also help if people could see the practical results.
Right, and I think you're going to start seeing that. Look, when legislation passes, we all celebrate in D.C. We have parties, we sign the bill. That doesn't actually do anything. It takes a number of months, years sometimes, for that money to get out there and those projects to start happening. And I think that's what you're going to see the campaign based around of, basically a scoreboard campaign. Look at all the things that I've accomplished. So when he goes to Michigan, he can stand in front of a new facility that's opening. When he's in New Hampshire, he can say, I signed this legislation into law, and that's why these jobs are created. That's why this school is better. That's why this road is paved and allowing for more businesses to come in. And that's where I think you'll start seeing the poll numbers tick up. He's just got to get out and sell it.
One consistent pattern in polling data for the last several months has been the country is not psyched up about a Biden-Trump rematch.
Sure.
In Washington, as you well know, Jon, there's this conversation about would Senator Manchin run as a third-party candidate in that scenario? Would he?
I have no idea. I think
What is your sense?
I think he actually is undecided about what he wants to do. I think
intentionally coy.
I think it comes off as intentionally coy, but one thing I know about him is he doesn't like to focus on politics. He much prefers to focus on legislating. So for him, when the 2022 election ended, his election didn't start. He just saw that as another year that he gets to legislate. So I don't think he's actually focused on it right now. And look, he always told me the thing he decides every day and before every vote is, does it help West Virginia? Does it help the country? And I think at the end of the day, he's going to decide that, but it won't be until December or January. So people can keep asking him. He's just not going to have a decision till then. It'll frustrate people. I know it. But
I for one, will keep asking, and probably
sure
Jon Kott remained somewhat frustrated. But I appreciate the time. Jennifer Horn, I also want to thank you. Thanks to you both for joining us.